Harold Frederick Shipman was born on January 14, 1946 in Nottingham, England, the middle child of a working-class family. His father, a local coal miner, was a strict and domineering figure, while his mother, a nurse, provided a nurturing presence. This early exposure to the medical field may have influenced Shipman's later career choice. The Shipman family faced considerable hardship, especially following the death of Harold's mother from cancer when he was just 17. This traumatic event left a significant mark on Shipman, fostering a deep-seated fear of illness and death. It is speculated that these experiences may have contributed to his complex relationship with mortality and ultimately influenced his later actions as a physician. Shipman was an intelligent child, excelling academically. He attended the local grammar school, where he developed a keen interest in medicine. His mother's profession undoubtedly shaped his aspirations as he sought to follow in her footsteps. Shipman went on to study medicine at the Royal College of Surgeons, where he graduated in 1970. After completing his medical degree, Shipman initially worked in hospitals, gaining experience in various medical fields. However, his desire for autonomy and a more personal connection with patients led him to pursue a career as a general practitioner. By 1974, he had secured a position at a practice in Todmorden, West Yorkshire, where he began to establish himself as a reputable doctor. In the late 1980s, Shipman became a partner at a practice in Hyde, Cheshire. During this time, he continued to build his reputation as a caring physician, even winning the admiration of his colleagues and patients alike. Yet as he gained the trust of his patients, he also began to exploit it, embarking on a chilling path that would lead to unspeakable atrocities. Harold Shipman's modus operandi was methodical and insidious. He targeted elderly patients, often those who were frail or suffering from terminal illnesses. Shipman would typically administer lethal doses of diamorphine, a powerful opioid, under the pretense of providing pain relief. Many of his victims were found dead shortly after appointments with him, often in their homes, leading to suspicions of natural causes. The victims of Harold Shipman were predominantly elderly women, many of whom were suffering from various ailments. Edna B., a 73-year-old widow who Shipman treated regularly. Her death was attributed to natural causes, but it later emerged that she had received a lethal dose of diamorphine. Irene W., a 78-year-old woman who had a long-standing relationship with Shipman. She was found dead shortly after a routine appointment, raising suspicions among family members. The first major alarm regarding Shipman's activities arose in the early 1990s, when concerns about the number of unexpected deaths among his patients began to surface. Several families reported their suspicions to local authorities, leading to a more in-depth investigation into his practices. One notable incident involved the sudden death of Kathleen Grundy, an 81-year-old woman who had been a patient of Shipman's. After her death, her family discovered discrepancies in her will, which had been altered shortly before her passing, suggesting that Shipman may have had financial motives in addition to his heinous acts. The turning point in the investigation came when the local coroner, John Pollard, noticed an unusually high number of deaths among Shipman's patients. Following the concerns raised by families and the alarming pattern of deaths, the police initiated an inquiry into Shipman's activities. In 1998, following a detailed investigation, Shipman was arrested. The police gathered evidence from his practice, including medical records, patient files, and the testimony of grieving family members. As the investigation progressed, it became evident that Shipman had been systematically killing his patients for years. On September 7, 1998, Harold Shipman was charged with the murder of 15 patients and the forgery of documents related to the alteration of Kathleen Grundy's will. His arrest shocked the community, as many had regarded him as a trusted physician and a pillar of the local medical community. Harold Shipman's trial began in October 1999 at the Old Bailey in London. The proceedings were highly publicized, drawing significant media attention as the public sought answers about the man who had seemingly betrayed his Hippocratic oath. Key evidence presented during the trial included medical records, the prosecution highlighted inconsistencies in Shipman's medical records, showing a pattern of overprescribing opioids and other medications to his victims. Witness testimonies. Family members of the victims shared their experiences, recounting their suspicions and the circumstances surrounding their loved ones' deaths. Forensic evidence and toxicology reports confirmed the presence of lethal doses of diamorphine in several victims, further implicating Shipman. On April 7, 2000, Harold Shipman was found guilty of 15 counts of murder and 1 count of forgery, specifically related to the will of Kathleen Grundy. The overwhelming evidence, including toxicology reports, medical records, and witness testimonies, left little room for doubt regarding his guilt. The court sentenced him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The judge, Mr. Justice Forbes, described Shipman as a malignant and wicked force in the community, noting that his crimes were a grave betrayal of the trust placed in him as a doctor. Harold Shipman was incarcerated at HM Prison Manchester, later being transferred to Wakefield Prison. Despite his conviction, Shipman remained unrepentant and maintained his innocence throughout his time in prison. This refusal to admit guilt or provide any explanations for his actions further compounded the suffering of the victims' families, who were left with unanswered questions about the true extent of his crimes and his motivations. In prison, Shipman was isolated from other inmates for his own protection, given the notoriety of his crimes. He was described as a difficult prisoner, displaying little remorse or cooperation with prison staff. Psychological assessments conducted during his imprisonment suggested that Shipman exhibited traits consistent with narcissistic personality disorder, characterized by a lack of empathy, a sense of entitlement, and a profound need for control. Shipman's mental state continued to deteriorate during his time in prison. His refusal to acknowledge his guilt, combined with the isolation and the enormity of his crimes, led to speculation about his psychological well-being. Various theories were proposed to explain his behavior, including unresolved grief over the death of his mother, power-driven motives, and a possible compulsion to kill as a way of exercising control over life and death. Despite these theories, Shipman never offered a clear explanation for his actions. His silence and defiance left both the authorities and the public frustrated, as his motivations remained shrouded in mystery. On January 13, 2004, Harold Shipman was found dead in his cell at Wakefield Prison, just 1 day before his 58th birthday. He had committed suicide by hanging himself with bedsheets. The news of his death sent shockwaves across the UK, reigniting discussions about his crimes and the lingering impact they had on his victims' families. Many of the families expressed mixed emotions regarding Shipman's suicide. While some felt a sense of relief that he could no longer harm anyone, others were left feeling robbed of justice, as his death meant they would never receive the full answers or closure they sought. The circumstances surrounding his suicide also raised questions about the prison's ability to monitor high-profile inmates, particularly those deemed at risk of self-harm. For the families of Shipman's victims, his death marked the end of a tragic chapter, but left many unresolved feelings. Some expressed frustration that Shipman had taken the easy way out, depriving them of the opportunity to fully confront him and seek explanations for his actions. The sense of injustice was compounded by the fact that Shipman never admitted to the full extent of his crimes, leaving many to wonder if there were more victims who had gone unaccounted for. In the wake of his death, numerous memorial services were held for the victims. These gatherings served as a means for the community to heal and to remember the lives lost to Shipman's monstrous actions.